What happens when the woman who once walked away from the spotlight is forced to return, not for ratings, not for headlines, but for loyalty? For nearly 3 decades, Mornings in America began with two familiar faces. Hoda Kotb and Savannah Guthrie weren't just co-anchors. They were a rhythm, a balance, a partnership built in the quiet hours before sunrise. But in early 2026, that balance shattered. And what followed was not just a news story. It was a test of friendship, faith, and emotional strength under pressure no camera could soften. This is the story of a retirement that didn't last, a kidnapping that turned into a national vigil, and a bond that may be the only reason everything didn't collapse. In September 2024, Hoda looked straight into the camera and did something few television legends ever managed to do gracefully. She said goodbye on her own terms. After 26 years at NBC, she announced she was stepping away. She had just turned 60. The milestone made her reflective. She talked about time differently, about mornings she wanted to spend at breakfast tables instead of anchored desks, about bedtime stories instead of breaking news alerts. Her final day on the Today set in January 2025 was emotional, celebratory, and filled with gratitude. Friends packed the studio. Her daughters, Haley and Hope, ran into her arms. It felt complete. It felt earned. She moved to Westchester. She started a new venture focused on wellness. She joked about PDA meetings and neighborhood walks. For the first time in decades, her alarm clock didn't scream at 4 a.m. The chapter seemed closed until February 1st, 2026. That morning, news broke out of Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie, Savannah's 84-year-old mother, was missing. At first, it sounded like one of those situations that would resolve quickly. Maybe she'd fallen. Maybe she'd wandered. But within hours, it became clear this was something darker. There were signs of a struggle. Blood on the porch. A doorbell camera disconnected in the middle of the night. A masked figure caught in grainy footage. Savannah left immediately. She didn't hesitate. She didn't over-explain. She simply boarded a flight to Arizona and stepped out of the anchor chair without knowing when she'd return. Back in New York, the set felt wrong. The chair beside Craig Melvin was empty. The rhythm was broken. And then, 9 days later, something nobody expected happened. Hoda walked back through the doors of Studio 1A. She didn't return as a guest. She didn't say she was just filling in. She stepped back into the role she had left behind. Her daughters had to adjust again. The early mornings resumed. The Westchester quiet was replaced with Manhattan noise. The life she had carefully reshaped bent under the weight of loyalty. Why? Because years earlier, when Hope had been hospitalized in 2023, Savannah had been the first person through the hospital doors. That memory mattered. When Hoda spoke that first morning back, her voice was steady but layered with something deeper than professionalism. She explained she was there so Savannah could stay in Arizona without worrying about the show. It wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about contracts. It was about showing up. And viewers felt it immediately. Their partnership didn't begin under bright lights. It started in a cramped office when they were just reporters sharing deadlines and vending machine snacks. They bonded over long hours and honest conversations. Faith, motherhood, the weight of ambition, the fear of failure. When they became the first all-female team to lead the morning show in 2018, it wasn't just a career milestone. It was validation of a friendship that had survived competition, industry politics, and the unforgiving nature of live television. Savannah, with her legal mind and controlled delivery. Hoda, intuitive and emotionally open. Different, but complementary. That's why Hoda's return felt natural. It felt inevitable. But behind the cameras, the crisis was escalating. On February 3rd, the case took a terrifying turn. An email landed in the inboxes of TMZ and two Tucson television stations. It was cold, structured, businesslike, for $1 million in Bitcoin. Pay by Thursday. Miss the deadline, and it jumps to $6 million by Monday. The sender described details that had not been released publicly, what Nancy had been wearing, what had been knocked over inside the house. Information only someone present could know. It was credible. It was calculated. And it shifted the case from disappearance to extortion. The FBI began tracking the cryptocurrency wallet address listed in the demand. It had been created using a digital mixer designed to obscure transaction trails. The sophistication suggested planning. Patience. Savannah and her siblings faced a nightmare decision. Do you pay without proof of life? Or do you risk waiting? On February 7th, Savannah appeared in a video alongside her brother Cameron and sister Annie. Her face looked composed. Too composed. "We received your message," she said. "We understand. We will pay." She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She negotiated. But there was one devastating problem. No proof of life had been provided. No photo. No voice recording. No confirmation Nancy was alive or receiving her heart medication. The clock ticked toward the Monday deadline, and the silence from the kidnappers grew louder. Back in New York, Hoda made a quiet decision. If they couldn't reveal every investigative detail, they could make sure Nancy was never just a headline. On February 9th, she pinned a small yellow ribbon to her jacket. Within minutes, everyone on screen wore one. No memo required. The symbol spread. Viewers sent photos of yellow ribbons tied around trees from Maine to California. In Tucson, local businesses handed out yellow carnations. Nancy's neighborhood gates were wrapped in bright strands of fabric. The studio filled with yellow roses. It wasn't performative. It was intentional. Hoda understood something crucial. Kidnappers operate in darkness. Attention is pressure, and pressure can break walls. Each morning, she reminded viewers of Nancy as a mother, a grandmother, a woman who had lived independently in the Catalina foothills for decades. She told stories about Nancy's strength. Widowed at 49 when her husband Charles died suddenly in 1988, 3 children to raise alone, a job at the University of Arizona to put them through college. Savannah often described her as iron granite strong. But now that strength was being tested in the most brutal way, forensics teams combed Nancy's home. Blood on the porch that didn't match Nancy's DNA suggested the attacker had been injured. A force-back door. A rug bunched near the kitchen island. Nancy's phone left plugged in. The doorbell camera captured a shadowed figure at 1:47 a.m., dark hoodie, tactical mask, a backpack later identified as an Ozark Trail model commonly sold in big box stores. About 2 miles away, a discarded glove was found near a drainage ditch. DNA inside matched the blood from the porch. It meant the suspect fled on foot before likely entering a vehicle. Surveillance footage from gas stations within a 10-mile radius was pulled. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit built a profile. Male, roughly 5'10", athletic build, tactical familiarity. Then came a digital mistake. On February 11th, someone attempted to log into the ransom email account from public Wi-Fi at a truck stop near the New Mexico border. By the time agents arrived, the suspect was gone. But the geographic ping narrowed the search. It was progress, but not resolution. And still no proof of life. While the nation saw Savannah as calm and composed, Hoda saw something else. Savannah had been raised under a no-weakness code. When her father died, Nancy didn't crumble. She worked, she provided, she endured. Savannah inherited that discipline. On camera, she reported updates like a correspondent covering someone else's story. But this was her mother. In private calls between New York and Arizona, Hoda urged her friend to breathe, to sleep, to let herself feel. Strength, she knew, can become a prison. Savannah was trying to manage investigators, siblings, her own children, media scrutiny, and the kidnappers, all while maintaining the public face of stability. The emotional load was staggering. Hoda worried that if Savannah allowed herself to break, she would feel she had failed the very woman she was trying to save. And so, Hoda did what she could. She carried the broadcast. She carried the tone. She carried the weight of the mornings so Savannah could focus on the nights. After each show, long after viewers had moved on with their day, Hoda's Instagram transformed into something raw. No polished studio photos. No promotional language. Just family snapshots of Nancy laughing on a porch, holding a birthday cake, smiling beside Savannah. Bring her home. 3 words. She filmed quiet, late-night messages from her kitchen. Work makeup still on. Exhaustion visible. Keep sharing her face, she urged. Don't stop. She understood modern attention. Understood that viral visibility could tighten the net. Tips flooded hotlines. Online discussions dissected timelines. Amateur sleuths compared surveillance images. It was messy, but it kept the case alive. And for Savannah, scrolling at 2 a.m., it meant she wasn't alone. As the second ransom deadline passed, silence became the loudest sound in the story. The family had said they would pay. The kidnappers had gone quiet. Was it fear? Strategy? A sign something had gone wrong? Investigators faced the brutal reality that without proof of life, payment could disappear into digital nothingness. But refusing to pay carried its own unbearable risk. Savannah's brother had publicly asked for direct communication. None came. The FBI tightened focus on contractors who had recently worked inside Nancy's home. Anyone who might have known her routines, known she lived alone, known the family's public profile. This wasn't random. It felt targeted, and that realization cut deeper than the ransom demand itself. Weeks into the crisis, something else surfaced, quietly, painfully. Was Savannah's composure helping the investigation or isolating her emotionally? Hoda, at 61, had stepped back from daily fame and gained perspective. She knew careers end. Public images shift. Applause fades. But family? That's everything. Watching Savannah balance iron discipline with daughterly fear revealed the true measure of their friendship. Hoda had sacrificed comfort, routine, peace. She returned to 4 a.m. alarms and relentless scrutiny without hesitation. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. Because loyalty isn't proven when things are easy. It's proven when everything is breaking. The masked intruder remains unidentified. The DNA profile narrows possibilities but hasn't produced a name. The Bitcoin wallet shows activity, but no confirmed transfer. The truck stop login gave geography, not identity. And Nancy Guthrie's fate remains the question hanging over 2 cities, Tucson and New York, like a storm cloud that refuses to move. But something else has become clear. This isn't just a kidnapping investigation. It's a study in resilience, in friendship, in the limits of strength. Hoda once walked away from the spotlight, believing she had closed a chapter. Life had other plans. Savannah stands at the center of a nightmare no amount of legal training or professional discipline can control. And through it all, one truth has emerged. Behind the polished delivery and broadcast smiles are 2 women navigating fear the way millions of others would, clinging to hope, leaning on loyalty, and refusing to disappear into silence. The question now isn't just whether Nancy will come home. It's whether the iron composure that built Savannah's career can coexist with the vulnerability required to survive this, and whether Hoda's return is temporary or the beginning of a new chapter neither of them ever expected. Because sometimes the biggest headlines aren't about crime or ransom. They're about who shows up when the world falls apart.